What were we thinking? Why did we say these cards sucked? But in reality, they're actually pretty darn good. It's the underrated cards Darkmoon Faire edition. These cards were rated poorly by the community and in some cases yours truly, but in reality are seeing some substantial play in the Darkmoon Faire meta so far, and in some cases even seem to have the potential to do more. So let's kick this off here with ETC God of Metal. I recently saw Trump had a video. This one, the thumbnail showcased him as 1 star, and perhaps in reality, Trump thinks he might be a 5-star card. And indeed, everybody was pretty low on ETC, only 2.2 stars among the community. And when it comes to community rankings, it's like almost impossible to see a card below 2. 1 is really your bottom because there's no 0-star cards. So, there's absolute garbage cards are like usually 1.7, 1.8, 2.2 is down there. And I personally gave ETC 3 stars. I saw a little bit more potential. Now, in reality, ETC is actually pretty popular build around right now for Warrior, particularly at higher levels of play. We see some of these ETC kind of control combo warriors that are often control warriors with this ETC finisher combo with, pin flingers and brooms and bloodsword mercenaries to burst your opponent down for, potentially 30 plus health to essentially end the game. And right now that means ETC is being played in 4.2% of all Hearthstone decks and in 42% of Warrior decks. And that is absolutely not the numbers for a 2-star card. That makes him a really significant, probably 4-star plus card in the meta right now, which means although I didn't personally underrate him as much as the community did at large, I still underrated ETC as well. He's even better than I expected in this case as well. So we all kind of got this one a little bit wrong because it turns out that ETC combo is significant, is playable, and I think it will actually increase in popularity over time, and it might remain a finisher package for slower Warrior decks for a fairly long while to come. Okay, up next here is Derailed Coaster, rated at 2.1 stars by the community. That is horrifyingly low. 2 stars for me as well. And for the record, 2.1 stars to the community is way worse than 2 stars for me. That's like bottom 10 or 15 cards in the entire set for the community. But we all got it wrong. We were all wrong because Derailed Coaster right now is actually a really good card in Evolve Shaman lists, which means it's being played in 7.6% of all decks. That's really, really high. And 55% of Shaman decks. I didn't specify there, but this is within Shaman specifically. It's being played in 55% of class decks in Shaman, even though it's a neutral card. And that's really what's doing the weight here in the work for Derailed Coaster, because it turns out Evolve Shaman loves a card that can summon you multiple minions on board. Plus, this 5-drop itself is great to evolve. So you're getting, 3, 4, 5 bodies, and you're turning that 5-drop into a 6-drop. That's all fantastic for Evolve Shaman. It also fits really nicely into many different curve scenarios where you can coin a weapon on 4, load this thing up on turn 5, just play it on turn 6 right after your weapon on 5. It's all just flowing real smooth, and this makes a nice big payoff style card for Evolve Shaman list. So it's a big one and a successful one, and Evolve Shaman is a very strong deck. I don't think any of us really anticipated the upside on this one. It turns out going wide that consistently and having this great base Evolve body went a long way towards making this a 4-star plus card, absolutely not a 2-star card. All right, so moving on over here to Druid, and it's Umbral Owl, and this card really surprised me, coming in at only 2.1 stars from the community. Now, I gave this one 3. That's still way too soft, I think. I think it's very much a 4-star card. When I looked at this one, I think my biggest hesitation was, well, it's only a 4/4. Is that going to be significant enough or swingy enough? The thing I think I failed to see was that Survival of the Fittest exists. So this is really an 8/8 with Rush, and a 0 mana 8/8 with Rush at that, which is, of course, insane. Sometimes 0 mana 8/8s are enough. This one also gets to swing the board when you play it, making that Survival of the Fittest turn instead of being something garbage. Instead, it's insane. You're swinging the board with your 8/8 Rush. You're developing some 0-mana taunts alongside it. That's been crazy for Clown Druid, and that makes this a great tool. Shows up in almost 4% of all decks and 42% of Druid decks. So this is now a staple for that sort of build and for the class. Anybody who's playing that survival of the fittest style, Umbral Owl fits in really nicely. But I'm still shocked how much people liked or didn't really like this one. I thought it would have been much more loved. People usually love cost discounts. Perhaps it was the size that held people back, or they didn't see the potential survival of the fittest angle like myself. I'm not sure what it was, but that's a much lower rating than I would have expected for a card like this one. So yeah, it turns out we all underestimated and missed the mark on this one. All right, so next up here is Deck of Lunacy. Probably the least underrated of all the cards in this video, but one I thought was still noteworthy because it got less than 3 stars among community ratings, which is pretty low for the community. There aren't that many cards making it under 3 stars. And it's only being played in about 2% of total decks and a quarter plus mage decks right now, but that's still a little better than 3 stars because it really is a bit of a build around in mage right now, and some no minion mage packages running this, making it the star card that really defines the deck and wins you games in many cases. And that to me is a card that tends to be more like a 4-star card if it's seeing any play at all, which this is, and it's deck defining. It seems like 3 stars or 2.9 isn't quite enough for Deck of Lunacy, but certainly an argument to be made that this isn't all that underrated. I hear you. Nonetheless, I think this exceeded many people's expectations as a somewhat playable card and not just a total meme card, because that's what a lot of people gave this one. If you look at that score, that's probably a lot of people who thought this was going to be a 5-star awesome card, and a lot of people thought it was going to be a 1-star meme card, so you land in the middle somewhere. So probably half of people underrated this one, and probably half of people were close or maybe even overrated this one a little. I think my 4-star rating is a little high. I'd probably still put this in like 3.5, almost 4-star range. I think it will one day be a 4-star card, though. So hopefully it does meet that expectation. But for now, I think the community was just a little bit soft on Deck of Lunacy. Moving on to the final card here, it's Carnival Clown. Also rated at 2.9 stars by the community. I gave this one 3 stars, so right in line there. But I think Carnival Clown's been way better, and it has been played in a handful of decks, not just Druid, where it's certainly most prominent in 61% of Druid decks right now. That says class decks, but that's specifically Druid. That's almost 5% of all decks right now as well. So Carnival Clown, it's been a big part of the meta. We've seen it played in like Warlock and Warrior and a handful of other places as well that try to squeeze it in with some Yashiraj stuff. Not as good, certainly not as meta significant, but the fact that it's even diversifying out from one deck that it's a star in is a pretty good sign for this one. And yeah, it turns out making a giant board of 8/8 clowns is pretty scary, or 12/12 clowns, or whatever it is. This card has a lot more finishing power and potential than many people, including myself, were able to realize based on the previews. I mean, this is a kind of card I would normally give 2 stars. I was like, I kind of took a flyer and it's like, well, it is a lot of bodies sometimes. Maybe that's good enough. I still, despite that, didn't expect just how good it could be, because Clown Druid there for the first few days of the meta was insane. Still a solid meta-relevant deck, if not quite as powerful as it once was. And that's all really thanks to what Carnival Clown can do as that finisher piece. So a shockingly interesting card here to make the underrated list. All right, so there you have it, the most underrated cards of the Darkmoon Faire. There really weren't too many in this video, and frankly, there weren't too many overrated cards either. I think people did a better job than normal here at predicting which cards were going to work out in this expansion. But still, a handful of surprises here and there. In particular, underrated cards, people tend to rate cards a little bit high. So these weirdly low scores were pretty few and far between. That's why this list was so short. I was really looking for cards that were under 3 stars, but still seeing some significant play, which there really weren't too many. That said, if there were any cards you underrated, if you think these are still somehow overrated and people shouldn't be playing Carnival Clown, share all those thoughts in the comments below, or just curious to hear your guys' discussion, or if you had some other cards you thought were underrated, certainly share those too. All that said, thanks as always for watching, and until next time, game on.